Hello guys, welcome to the video. Today we will be doing my Lest We Forget project over Thomas Garrett. My project partner is Jaden Nelson, who will be presenting after I'm done. We will be reading his biography and everything and all the resources from historydelaware.gov. Let's get into it. Thomas Garrett was a pivotal figure in American history whose contributions to the abolition movement and the Underground Railroad have shaped the course and future against the fight against slavery. This will explore his life and the legacy of Thomas Garrett, but his name is mainly overshadowed by more famous figures such as Harriet Tubman or Frederick Douglass, but their work was equally vital in the fight for freedom. We will explore together his personal background, the decisions and events that propelled him into the historical spotlight. We will talk about his complexities of life and that make him, in some ways, profoundly human. But lastly, we will talk about why Garrett is relatively unknown today and why it's important for us to remember his contributions in the 21st century. His backstory. Thomas Garrett was born on August 21st, 1789. In Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. He was raised in a Quaker family. Garrett was taught to value his freedom and equality, principles that would later guide his entire life. His Quaker upholdings not only influenced his moral compass, but played a significant role in shaping his decisions to oppose slavery. Garrett's life was far from privileged. As a young lad, he worked as a shoemaker, which was a modest profession, but it was his personal experiences and his personal encounters that gave him insight into the future. Garrett's life took a turn when he settled in Willingham, Delaware, a location that would become a central hub for the Underground Railroad, a network that helped enslaved African Americans escape to freedom. Now, what was Garrett's involvement in the Underground Railroad and that put him into the history books? Well, he started his involvement in 1820s. But however, it wasn't until the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which required citizens to capture and return runaway slaves, that actually helped him. Garrett became a significant figure in the abolition movement. Rather than comply with the law, he openly defied it, sheltering runaway slaves and helping them escape for freedom, despite the risk of heavy fines, even imprisonment. He was one of the major key conductors in the Underground Railroad. In the northern part of Delaware, his home Willingham became a refuge for hundreds and thousands of slaves. Garrett's bravery earned him a key trust from important figures in the abolition movement, such as Harriet Tubman, who he worked with very closely. Right here it says, Garrett helped Tubman and other freedom seekers navigate through his network, providing food, shelter, and sometimes transportations to the next stop on their journey. His efforts never went unnoticed. Garrett was arrested multiple times, but he never remained broken. In 1848, he was fined $1,000 for his involvement in helping groups and fugitive slaves. He refused to pay the fine, instead raised the money for his friends, allies, including fellow abolitionists and business owners, to cover his legal costs. Garrett's house was often raided by slave catchers, but he didn't care. Despite the constant danger, he remained steadfast to this cause. Now, the shortcomings that made Garrett supremely human, like all historical figures, Garrett had his flaws. Although his moral convictions were clear, Garrett had personal issues. For instance, he was opposed to slavery. He was a man of his time and held a certain racial standards that were common among most white abolitionists. Garrett, for instance, struggled with the idea of a full social equality for African Americans. He was more focused on a moral imperative of ending slavery than a long-term challenges of integrating freed slaves into society. But also, Garrett faced challenges in his public and private life. He was deeply involved in the Underground Railroad and the abolition movement, yet his efforts often put him at odds with his business interests. His business suffers a financial result of his refusal to comply with the Fugitive Slave Act. These short human comments, these shortcomings are important to recognize because they remind us that even the most courageous people like him are imperfect. It is a testament that Garrett's strength of character that was able to push through these personal flaws and continue to fight him for what he believed was right. But how should we remember Thomas Garrett in the 21st century? Today, his name is relatively unknown to many. You can't just ask anyone on the street, they won't know. He's mainly overshadowed by famous names like earlier Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and John Brown. But his story is essential to the understanding of the breadth of the Underground Railroad. As many individuals who risked their lives for freedom, as we examine his legacy in the 21st century, we could draw good, important lessons from it. One about moral conviction and standing up for justice in the face of a systematic oppression. Even though his story sometimes remains relevant because of the fight of injustice, equality, and human rights continues, his efforts remind us that one person can make a significant impact. And sometimes it's the quiet heroes who work in the shadows, just like Batman, but are as important as who make the headlines. Garrett's life also serves as a reminder of the need to confront the injustice of our time, whether they are related to racial inequality, immigration, or just human rights. We should remember Thomas Garrett, for not just his role in the abolition movement, but as a symbol of how we should all contribute to the meaningless change. Regardless of our social status or resources, he may not have sought fame, but he deserves the recognition for the countless lives he touched and for his steadfast refusal to accept the world as it was. As I finish up, I will give over the floor to Jaden so he can present his project.
Thank you, Jacen. Hi, I'm Jaden Nelson, and this is my project on Thurgood Marshall, one of the most influential legal minds in American history. Today, I'll be walking through his life, his groundbreaking contributions, and the reasons why, despite his pivotal role in shaping civil rights and American law, he remains a relatively underappreciated figure for many. In this presentation, I'll highlight Marshall's personal backstory, his rise to prominence, the challenges he faced, and why he continues to be a figure of both admiration and controversy. Thurgood Marshall was born in 1908 in Baltimore, Maryland, growing up in a segregated America. He witnessed firsthand the depth of injustices and racial discrimination. His father, a railroad porter, and his mother, a teacher, instilled in him the values of justice and equality. Marshall attended Lincoln University and later the University of Maryland Law School, where he faced significant racial discrimination. He was even denied entry to the late state's law school because of his race. Nevertheless, he went on to earn his law degree from the historically black Howard University Law School, where he was mentored by the great Charles Hamilton Houston. These early experiences shaped his lifelong commitment to fighting racial inequality. Marshall's career as a lawyer truly began with his work at the NAACP. He gained national attention for his legal victories in key civil rights cases. His most famous case was Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, in which he argued before the U.S. Supreme Court that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. Marshall's victory in this landmark case effectively overturned Plessy versus Ferguson and ended legal segregation in public schools. His work on the cases, along with others like Shelley versus Kramer and McLaurin versus Oklahoma State Regents, cemented his place as one of the leading figures in the fight for civil rights. While Marshall's achievements are monumental, he was not without controversy. As the first black Supreme Court justice, his decisions were not always universally lauded. Some conservatives criticized his liberal stance on issues like abortion and affirmative action. Marshall also faced internal criticisms from other civil rights leaders who felt his judicial position was too moderate. especially in comparison to the more radical approaches of figures like Malcolm X or Stokely Carmichael. Additionally, his strong association with the Democratic Party and the political compromises he made were seen by some as signs of his pragmatic, yet at times reluctant nature in dealing with the realities of institutional power. Thurgood Marshall should always be remembered as a trailblazer, a man whose life and career were defined by unwavering commitment to justice and equality. He was a fierce advocate for civil rights, and his legal victories shaped the very foundations of American law. Despite the criticisms and contradictions he faced, Marshall's legacy remains a symbol of the power of law as a tool for social change. In the 21st century, his work continues to resonate with issues of racial inequality, access to education, and the broader fight for justice. It's crucial that we recognize not just his successes, but also the personal and professional struggles he endured, as they humanize him and offer lessons in perseverance, strategy, and the importance of fighting for what's right. In conclusion, Thurgood Marshall's story is one of courage, intellect, and moral conviction. He transformed the American legal system and played a key role in the civil rights movement. His legacy should inspire future generations to continue pushing for justice, even though when faced with legal victories, but for the personal sacrifice